Good afternoon, class. Uh, Welcome back. We will be going to continue our unit of the Revolutionary War. And with that being said, today we are going to go through our segment of Battles of Saratoga from September 17th through October 7th of 1777. But right before we go over the context of these battles, you guys are going to learn about the leaders. The British leader over here on our left-hand side is General John Burgoyne, and he is going to be the main person for the British Army during these battles. Then for the American leaders, right here in the middle, we have Major General Horatio Gates. And then on the right-hand side is General Benedict Arnold. In the middle here, Horatio Gates is the main general that is in charge of the overall battle, of battles per se. And then General Benedict Arnold is just under his wing. Now, for context, it's a three-pronged British attack on New York. So what that means is General Burgoyne's army is coming from the north and traveling south through this point of Fort Ticonderoga. That is like the first prolonged attack on New York itself. And then the second prolonged attack is from Fort Ticonderoga all the way down when it gets to Fort Edward here, which is right at the cusp of Hudson Rivers Valley, or the Hudson River. And then right south of Saratoga is we have Bemis Heights, which is the general area right here that Horatio Gates is in charge of. This is where he has his headquarters, which is going to be very important to know and understand once we get to the Battle of Bemis Heights. But before that, we will be going over the Battle of Freeman's Farm. The Battle of Freeman's Farm is just 10 miles south of Saratoga. And this is where Burgoyne divides his army into three different columns. As you can see, one goes right through the middle of the fields. One goes right next to what comes up from the Hudson River, travels south, and then goes up through that way. And then we have another group that comes in from the woodlands / forest area. With this being given, General Horatio Gates orders General Arnold to take his battalion, which is just 400 sharpshooters, to push back the British advancement from the woods, which is this area right here, was because the west side of the defenses were lacking a little bit, because this area right here would be the area that Horatio Gates would have the majority of under control. And then the middle is also controlled, but then the west side here, it's very lacking and very open. This is where Arnold's battalion and his leadership repulses the British attack, with having the British losing many of their soldiers. But even though Arnold was able to do so, it still ended up becoming a British victory because they were able to hold the field. And holding the field means that the British weren't able to successfully push forward and occupy more of the battlefield, but they weren't also pushed back in order to retreat and run away either. They had control of the middle of the battlefield, which is holding the field. So that is why, in a sense, it is a British tactical victory. But even with the victory, they had very little resources and they were trapped within the wilderness because the majority of this battle was in the forest. Well, by the forest at least. And then for the Americans, it was so to say it was a strategic victory because they were able to halt the British forces from continuing their march. And then Arnold was relieved from command. You might question why he was relieved from command. The reason is because General Arnold wanted to have credit for what he has done for the Battle of Freeman's, for the Freeman's Farm. But Horatio Gates did not add General Arnold into the report. So on paper, General Gates took credit for the victory of Freeman's Farm, while in reality it was Benedict Arnold that won the battle, or from for the Americans' point of view. So now when it comes to the second battle of the Saratoga, battles of Saratoga, is the second battle of Bemis Heights, which is where General Burgoyne from the British decides to send his forces to the American front lines and try to take over Bemis Heights and the Hudson River Valley area itself. Just tries to take it over because they were so lack on resources than materials that they just needed to win this war as much as they could. But with Burgoyne sending his forces to American front lines, the Americans forces through General Gates decided to wait close enough until the British Army got close within range of their cannons and militia and sharpshooters, waited for them to come within range to attack, which they did, and they did it very successfully. As you can see, it was a devastating British first attack. But afterwards, the British were able to begin to rally their forces, and they started to push the Americans back. But then, even though he was relieved from his duty, Benedict Arnold comes back onto the field. And this is where he takes his 400, his sharpshooters through the west side here at Balcarres and pushes them to the Balcarres roundabout, which happens to be Freeman's Farm. Arnold ordered his men to fire upon the officers, more importantly, the generals who are in charge of the militia, so that the British militia or British Army would be able to start to crumble without their leadership, in sense, is exactly what happened. It became to be a British victory, not British victory, excuse me, an American victory. And with the attempt of the British and Burgoyne trying to escape from their losses, they were attempting to escape to the north. But within 2 days, the American troops were able to surround Burgoyne and his army. And then after they were surrounded. A couple days go by between Burgoyne and Horatio Gates for negotiations. Uh, that was between after this October 7th, between October 15th, like that timeline area, very broad on when the negotiations were happening. But on October 17th, this is when a not a treaty, but a petition was signed, and that Burgoyne's army surrenders to the American forces on October 17th. And then the result of the battles of Saratoga, for the American side, it was just about 330 casualties, and then for the British, it was 1,135 casualties. It was a battle that definitely was in favor of the Americans when it came down to casualties, but it was also very important for the Americans. And that reason is because it ended General Burgoyne's attempt to control the Hudson River Valley and southern state of New York, which would have been the main line to the other colonies and various other trade routes and allies that we had during that time. And then the other part that we have here, it also proved to France and other European countries, such as the Spanish and Dutch, that we are capable of beating Britain, and that they provided support in our aids to defeat Britain and hopefully defeat them within their lines in Europe as well, since the Spanish and Dutch were also trying to fight against the British during this time as well. Well, that was it. Hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. Yeah.